Very well, guys. Welcome to the second part. So remember that we were on the slide number 22. We were talking about general age interests, but here we are going to talk about a little bit more in detail about those needs and abilities, right? So one problem that we constantly have, uh, especially in public education, is the level of the students, right? So we usually have students in public schools that are in 7, 8, 9, 10, 11th grade with different mind interests and let's say thematic interest, but with the linguistic competence of children, right? Um, there are different conditions, there are different levels, but in general, they are not really proficient in English, right? That is a reality. Uh, Again, some schools are much better than others for different reasons. The level of some students are much better than others for many different reasons. But in general, that's what we find. No, like students in 11th grade who still have a hard time uh, getting to understand the to be better, for example, right? So a mistake that many teachers commit is that they provide reading material that is of the level of children, but then it has the same thematics, right? So either some fantastic stories that are very children oriented, or things about the routines, or things about, I don't know, different materials that is definitely not age appropriate. So these can be frustrating, even if they get to know the language, or even if it's, uh, for some of them, it's even difficult to get even those children's books. Um, well, that is not the best idea. Yes, they are going to feel intimidated, frustrated, sometimes ashamed of reading that, uh, underappreciated. Well, a lot of negative feelings that are not really good for the process, not for themselves, for their self-esteem, and also not for their process as young learners, right? So it is not okay to give that, right? Because most of the time it's going to be counterproductive, right? Then I would recommend that you select books with exciting plots. Uh, Not all the books are really dynamic, yes, and we have to be aware of that. There are books in which you can read 20 pages or 30 pages and nothing happens, right? You read page by page by page and after page, and there's not even uh, a displacement in time, right? Like, or there is not even movement in geography. Uh, so definitely that is not the type of books for young young adults or teenagers, right? Uh, I'm not against those books that I have just mentioned. I actually enjoy many of them, yes, because they have to do with inner dialogue, inner conversation, flow of consciousness, and I really like many of those. But well, that's me. Uh, when you are in that age, you would like to see some action, something that happens, dynamics, um, maybe some surprises, right? So make sure that these books that you selected have some sort of these elements, right? Some sort of these ideas, because otherwise it might be like boring for them, and maybe not so good. Even books that are really exciting, bored kids, bored teens, because they are not really used to read, and that happens to yourself right now as teachers, right? Many of you, I bet, that don't like reading, and that's fine. It's a preference. It's something that you like to do or not. But unfortunately, you have to do it. Yes, so you're required to read for many different reasons. Yeah, but they don't have to, not necessarily, right? So you can, I mean, if you can make the transition better for them, that will be nice. Yes, we as teachers have this huge responsibility, and it's that normally if you hated something, it was because of your teacher, right? So there are many different authors that are hated worldwide by teens or by young adults. And I don't know, Garcia Marquez, or the book of Neocid, or the book, I mean, all those books that you were forced to read in school, sort of determine that you didn't like to read because you think about them and you completely reject that, right? So let's try and not be that teacher, not take that responsibility, that let's say negative consequence of their rejection to reading. Let's try to make them a little bit easier for them, right? Now the next one that or the net aspect that is mentioned in there is that of comprehensible characters. Please, people get confused all the time with this label of comprehensible. Yes, comprehensible doesn't mean an understandable character, that you understand like the person, or that understand how he speaks or something like that. No, it's not that. Close attention, because I'm going to ask you this in the future for sure. A comprehensible character is a character that comprehends, that somehow has a lot of different sides, that has a lot of different dimensions, that is not unidimensional, right? What is unidimensional in terms of a character? That he is a good guy, and he is excellent, and he's strong, and he's nice, and he's attractive, and he is honorable, and he has no flaws, right? That is a unidimensional good guy character. Or a unidimensional villain, well, it's a terrible guy, and he is evil just because he doesn't have really a motivation. He's just a classic evil guy, and has not even a drop of goodness in his being, and he is always expected to do the worst and always does it, right? You see, so they are like archetypes, only like somehow really fake people. Yes, because people are not like that. Yes, human beings have a lot of different dimensions. Yes, you can be one person when you're in school, one person when with your family, with your parents, with your couple, at the bar, in a party. Yes, so comprehensible characters have a lot of different dimensions. Some of them, let's say, what classical moralists have told us to label as good or bad, or more or less, responsible, irresponsible. Well, think about yourself, right? Think about yourself and how you have different dimensions to your personality. How can you be a nice person sometimes, and how can you be mean, and how can you be responsible, but then in some other cases you're a little bit lazy. Well, we are all have all those components of personality in ourselves, so we need to be trying to select these characters that are comprehensible. And why is that? Because the more comprehensible the character, the more relatable he or she is, right? And if you find somebody in the book that is either similar to you, or somebody you know that is believable, yes, even if it's a fantastic story, I don't know, let's mention Harry Potter, right? This is a lot of magic and things that is unrealistic, etc. But in general terms, it's a school, yes, and it has been so famous and so, let's say, loved or beloved by people, because there are a lot of different things that you can recognize from yourself in there. Even if you don't like Harry Potter, you can honestly, or let's say objectively say, yeah, sure, it's some sort of realistic in terms of some of the teachers and some of the students, and it seems like sort of realistic, right? So these comprehensible characters are a good idea. If you are able to have those into in your book, it might be fine. Okay. Now we have some other things, such as autobiographical works or travelogues. Yes, that you can include. Sometimes people who write about themselves, even if themselves are not so important, give us the motivation to see that, hey, I'm not, maybe somebody is so transcendental. I am not a writer, I am not a politician, I am not a singer, but it might be nice to write about me and share it with other people, right? So these autobiographical works maybe a good idea, or travelogues, right? Travelogues are basically stories about a trip, from one place to another, a country to another, one city to another, maybe in your own country, in a different country. Yes, maybe it can be even fictional countries, fictional locations. So those are ideas that are interesting. You know, people are moving all the time, uh, so they can be related to that. Or if you have a group of students who have never traveled anywhere, well, all the more reason to do that, because you can travel with literature. You can get to know different somehow locations that maybe because of money or time or limitations of any kind you can do. So that can be uh, like a good idea, right? Fine, let's go into the slide number 23 and let's talk about poetry. Yes, so if anybody selects poetry to use as a literary material, it might be nice, it might be really good. I like poetry a lot. I will be there to support you with that. But there's a reason, or there's a reality, yes, and it's that people in general don't like poetry, yeah, because most of you, most of us, most of them grew up with the prejudice about poetry that it was merely romantic, yes, so that normally it was something to declare your love, to somehow express your feelings of loveliness for another people, for another person, or to express certain things that was sort of cheesy and ridiculous, right? And indeed, there are quite some amount of poetry that is like that. But hopefully, if I was able to share with you like different things, well, there are poetry for a lot of different topics. Yes, the poetry about death, poetry about pain, poetry about cats, like today. Well, a lot of different ones. So sometimes you can include that, or even sometimes the curriculum demands that you must include that. So it should like be included or selected because of its immediate appeal. Okay, you're really required um, to select something that may be attractive, right? Now, the idea or the concept of attractive may be very different for each one of you, right? I give you a potential example over here, right? This is a fragment of a poem by Emily Dickinson. It's one of the greatest poets in America. Was and well, she has very complex and complicated poetry that requires a lot of analysis and a lot of different things in order to be appreciated. But I give you this that is hopefully more simplistic, right? Let's read it very quickly. It says, "I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell, they advertise, you know. How dreary to be somebody." A small part over here. Nevertheless, I'm not completely sure that you were able to understand on the first place. It's simple enough. The language is really easy to get, but were you able to get the idea? Let's go, no? So it says, "I'm nobody. Who are you?" Yes, so I am a person who is not famous for anything. I am not popular. I am not really beloved or admired, or somehow people are not attracted to me. That is to be a nobody, right? Who are you? So, well, we see over here that there's a conversation apparently between two people, right? Are you nobody too? So you, the person who are you talking to me, person who's talking to me, sorry, imagine this conversation between two people. So you are also unpopular, you're also not really beloved, you're also not really attractive, you're also not really admired. Then there's a pair of us. Oh, okay, so apparently this condition in which I felt so isolated and alone is no longer a reality, no? There's another person like me over there, yes? So then there's a pair of us. There's two people that is, not precisely popular. They are not precisely popular. Don't tell, they advertise. So if you see over here, there is like some sort of a pride of being a nobody. Yes, because let's say that the first thing that the other person said is, hey, don't tell it to anybody because they will advertise, like make publicity out of it. So please don't tell them. Don't tell them. Let's keep it a secret. Somehow being different to the rest of the people is valuable. Yes, even though if you're a weirdo or a freak or whatever, what this poem is saying, that they are even being nobody so difficult, so they are somehow proud of being a nobody. And then in the end it says how dreary to be somebody. Yes, so how terrible, how bad will be to be a somebody. A somebody can be, a really popular person, somebody who's recognized in the school, in the classroom, or something like that. But apparently, it's not special, no, because it's really equal to everybody else. And whenever you're really similar between each other, so you lack that special thing that makes you a little bit distinct or appreciative or valuable somehow, right? Well, put this into a context of the school, and in which you have a lot of different subgroups, like feeling special or alone, right? Special or isolated. So maybe you can have the group of the sportsmen who really like to play soccer all the time, or are very good at sports, but maybe not all the time be very as good as in the academic part. Or maybe you have the group of the little girls and the beautiful girls and the somehow pseudo models or divas, right? Because they are so nice. Maybe you can have the group of nerds that are always all the time studying and feeling, like that the academic is the most important part. Or maybe you have the group of the metalheads or the punk heads. Yes, when they always like to talk about their music and listen to their music and underappreciating the other ones. Or maybe the group of people who likes dancing all the time and partying or something, and people who like reggaeton and etc. Right? So each one of these groups may somehow feel identified with words like this. Yes, because all of them are special in their own way. Of course, if you present them the poem like that, well, maybe some of them wouldn't get it. Yes, but if you're able to explain a little bit what I just did, maybe they will have the possibility of feeling identified with it. Remember that this is all about potential. Maybe they still hate it after you explain it. Yes, maybe they are going to say that is silly, or that they don't like it, or that that's cheesy. No good, but at least you tried, and this has the potential of reaching them a little bit better. And this is just an example, And this example, I selected it because of you, the kind of students that I have. Of course, maybe for school, you can select something different or something like that, right? But so this is what we can have in terms of poetry, right? Now, I would recommend that if any of you are going to select either poems or tales, I would recommend that you select anthologies. Okay, anthologies are basically collections of the best works of an author or of a movement or of a trend, right? So you can select anthologies of horror tales, for example, an anthology of romantic poems, an anthology of science fiction short stories, an anthology of maybe tales based on TV series that exist, right? Or an anthology of somehow mystery or police thrillers, right? So it's going to be a little bit easier because somebody else already dedicated some time to select that material for you and put it together in a book that you can find online, or that you can find physical or something like that, right? And that it's something that you can do, and that is going to be a little bit easier to appreciate than a whole novel, for example, right? sometimes I would recommend that if you're going to work during a whole semester in your school, I mean, in the school that you work, or a whole period of 4 months, 3 months, it's a little bit easier to use this varied material, right? Like to select it in that way. Um, that could be somehow a little bit different, no? Because sometimes when you read a longer book, depends on the habits of your students, but it can get more annoying than just reading something not varied, no? They will have this attitude of, otra vez el libro, otra vez ese libro, llevamos 3 meses con el mismo libro. Of course, students can be difficult sometimes, but this level of variety can provide a better thing, no? And imagine that if something not so long, it's something short that you can finish relatively easy, and then if they didn't like it, you can change, or you can have an idea of something that may be a little bit more appealing for them. Okay, well, guys, so that's it for this particular video. There are some suggestions over there in the slides, but in general, this is like the most important part. We are going to talk about in the next video. We're going to talk about something really important, that is the ability to read fluently, right? Because after you have considered their needs, their goals, their abilities, and everything else, another thing that you are going to consider is how long or how quick are they going to be able to read that, okay? So let's discuss that into the next video. Thanks a lot. Hugs.